Over these last few years, I've watched a lot of different types of K-drama, from mystery and action to even the ones that some would consider super quirky and cringy. You know, stuff that teenage girls would watch. Overall, I do think K-drama is a lot more appropriate compared to some of the stuff America has been producing these days. And I'm not saying that there isn't any morally bad ones out there, but from experience, I tend to find a lot of K-dramas, especially the rom-com ones, more appropriate and sometimes wholesome. Not that they're perfect, but just a lot more proper, I would say, especially from a Christian perspective. So with that being said, here's my brutally honest take on K-drama. Let's get into the video.
Why don't you make me smile? Why don't you tell me your heart isn't gone?
Before we talk about the first point, I want to mention that this video was highly requested, which is partly why I'm making it, and if there are any other things that you want me to give my honest take on or react to, feel free to write it in the comments. The more requests I get for a particular thing, the more likely I will consider doing it. Anyway, let's talk about the first common theme, which is that a lot of K-dramas have a flawed portrayal of justice. So, what does this look like? From what I've noticed, a lot of K-dramas like to include the theme of revenge. A very common plot that you might see is the main character getting bullied in high school, and then once they get sick of it, they fight back either through violence or trying to ruin the bully's reputation. Now, I have a question. Where in the world are the teachers in these high school K-dramas when there's literally a fight happening and there are two students kicking each other in the heads? Because from what I've noticed, these high school teachers actually do not give 2 cents when there are students punching each other. I hope Korean high schools are not actually like this in real life, because that would honestly just be concerning. Now, back to the issue. The problem here isn't the fact that the K-drama showed the main character fighting back, even if it was with violence. The real problem comes when the act of trying to hurt the bully in any way is justified. That means when the show portrays the main character getting revenge as a good thing. Some examples of K-dramas that justify violence against the bad guys include Weak Hero Class, Bloodhounds, and Taxi Driver. Now, this is just from my own memory, so if I mistakenly interpreted these shows, then just write a comment and explain why you disagree. Anyway, the reason this is bad is because it is portraying something that is bad to be good, which is basically manipulating the truth. And the truth being that getting revenge in any way is wrong and sinful. God calls us to forgive, even if they are your enemy and someone who has hurt you. That's why even when Jesus was getting crucified and literally bleeding to death, he didn't curse those who were crucifying him. Instead, he said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." So to put all of this simply, when any K-drama, or any movie or show for that matter, shows a character getting revenge on the bad guy and it's portrayed to be a good thing, then that's bad. When I say they portray it as a good thing, it could look something like where the character finds peace after their revenge, or they don't feel any regret from hurting their bully or from hurting the bad guy, and it's basically just happily ever after. Another common thing you'll notice in K-dramas is how much drinking is involved. Like seriously, a lot if not most rom-com K-dramas probably have a scene where the characters are at a bar or convenience store drinking soju until they can't even stand up straight. It's basically the #1 coping mechanism for heartbreak and stress. Now, I get it, drinking is a big part of the culture there, but the problem is in how K-dramas portray it. They make drunkenness look funny and cute. You'll often see scenes where a girl gets drunk, stumbles, and the guy swoops in to catch her. Now, the Bible doesn't actually say that drinking itself is a sin, but what it does say very clearly is that drunkenness is a sin. Ephesians chapter 5 verse 18 says, "Do not get drunk with wine, which leads to debauchery. Instead, be filled with the Spirit." But in K-dramas, getting drunk is usually romanticized and shown as harmless or even necessary to deal with pain. It's basically pushing the idea that alcohol is the answer when life gets hard. So instead of coming to God with your problems, you try to run away from them by excessively drinking. The thing is, alcoholism is a very real problem in Korea. So when dramas romanticize it, it essentially downplays something that actually destroys lives and families in real life. To put it simply, when K-dramas normalize drunkenness as something that's funny or romantic, that's bad because, again, it's the idea of making something bad seem good, which is untruthful. To be honest, it's really just a temporary escape that never truly satisfies or fixes anything. Ultimately, only God can truly give the peace and comfort that people are endlessly searching for. Another theme that I've noticed with a lot of K-dramas is materialism and the obsession with status. Basically the idea that your worth is determined by how rich you are, how successful you are, and how good looking you are. And this is basically everywhere in K-dramas. We've got rich CEOs, a student who is treated like royalty because their family owns a giant company, people obsessing over getting perfect skin, and a person getting praised because of their attractive looks. Now, for those who don't measure up to these worldly and superficial standards, they're usually invisible and often looked down upon. However, some K-dramas do challenge this mindset. I've seen quite a few of them that try to redefine what values actually matter. So stuff like loyalty, kindness, and love instead of money, fame, and beauty. In fact, there's a K-drama called True Beauty, which promotes the message of self-acceptance and that true beauty comes from having a good heart and it's not just all about your physical appearance. Another one is this K-drama called Moment at 18, which explores the emptiness of defining yourself by worldly values such as class, grades, and wealth. Instead, the drama shows that compassion and honesty are more important and that there are consequences to your actions. In the Bible, Jesus says, "Be on your guard against all kinds of greed." Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions, but in K-dramas, they make it look like it does consist in an abundance of possessions, like having a Gucci handbag or driving a BMW, stuff that's supposedly the ultimate measure of value and worth. The problem is, none of those things actually last. Beauty fades cause you get old and wrinkly, money can't buy you into heaven, and your clothes eventually wear down. However, as Christians, we believe that your true worth doesn't come from these things. It comes from being created in the image of God and being loved by Him. That's something that doesn't fade and doesn't change based on the clothes you wear or the car you drive. You really don't need an IQ of 10,000 to see how much better this is compared to basing your identity and your self-worth on worldly stuff. Anyway, to put it simply, when K-dramas glorify wealth and beauty as if that's the peak of life, then that's bad because it's not true. But when they show values like compassion, honesty, loyalty, and forgiveness as more important traits, then that's good because those are the things that God really cares about. So anyway, I personally quite like K-drama overall. I think it can be super chill to watch at times, but what's important is that if you do choose to watch it, make sure you're aware of the values that are good and which ones are actually bad. Being able to know the differences is how we can keep ourselves from getting influenced by the bad stuff and not fall into sin. If you found the video valuable, remember to like and subscribe. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.